In October of 2019, I was finally able to get down to Bobsled, Virginia and ride the excellent collection of coasters at Kings Dominion. A collection that includes a Giga, an RMC, and 12 overall coasters. I was really impressed with the park overall, but today we're just going to rank the coasters, so let's dive in. To start, I just want to say I did not get a chance to experience Volcano the Blast coaster, so it will not appear on this list. The same goes for the all but confirmed 4D free spin for either 2021 or 2022. To lead off the list is one of two rides I didn't actually get to ride when I was at the park. The Great Pumpkin Coaster is an E&F Myler creation. Your basic oval kiddie coaster with some small hops, nothing here to really highlight. Pulling up in the number 11 spot may surprise some and probably will not surprise a lot of others. Grizzly was one of the most painful rides I've ever experienced. It jackhammered me through the entire layout and supplied little to no enjoyment. There wasn't any decent airtime, the layout's boring, and honestly the best part of the ride is the forest setting. Easily a one and done, and probably won't re-ride when I go back to the park either. Next up is Woodstock Express, the other coaster I had to pass on. Unfortunately, this had an hour wait from the opening, and it got worse throughout the day. But it's a classic mini PTC wooden coaster that looks like a perfect family ride. I've heard great things about these and recommend them to all guests trying to get over their fear of rides. Zapple is a wild mouse coaster built by Mack rides, and it has one extra benefit to most of the same model. It has a larger drop. It isn't really anything special, but there are some fun laterals and it really isn't that rough. The cars are too small, obviously, but that's every wild mouse. Now, I think this probably supplies a bit more fun than Woodstock Express, but honestly, both coasters are very close. Going into Anaconda, I had some pretty low expectations. I was ready for a lot of headbanging, a rough ride, and really no fun. However, the ride actually surprised me a bit. The inversions and tunnel were fun, and the ride wasn't all that rough. The ending of the layout is awfully boring, yeah, and there's some headbanging spots through those bad arrow transitions, but overall, this ride gets a little too much hate. It's probably because it sits on some prime land that the park could really use for something new and much better. Coming in at number 7 is Avalanche, which was my second bobsled coaster, the first being flying turns at Knoebels. And honestly, I think I was just a bit underwhelmed. The ride just felt a bit slow and less extreme than flying turns, and after waiting 45 minutes for the low capacity ride, it just didn't quite scratch that itch. That being said, I do love the feel of these bobsled coasters, and their uniqueness alone pushes it up to this spot. Now we enter a section of just strong supporting rides. Racer 75, or Rebel Yell, is a dueling PTC coaster that opened with the park. The park has done a fantastic job of keeping this ride running consistently and smoothly. The reason it isn't any higher on this list was my rides in 2019 felt a bit forceless. Typically these old classic Woodies really fling you up and out of your seat, but I think I just got some unlucky slow rides. I look forward to trying out both tracks in the back during my next visit and probably moving it up on my list. It is also my favorite dueling coaster at the moment. Following up Racer is the coaster that is probably the most overrated on my list. But what can I say, it really surprised me. Backlot Stunt Coaster is the most intense family coaster ever. The helix after the launch grayed me out, and the rest of the layout really supplied some fun forces. The two launches were great, and the ride as a whole was pretty smooth. The ride gets overlooked since there are two clones of it at Canada's Wonderland and Kings Island, but it's a ride I really won't be skipping when I visit any of these parks. I look forward to possibly getting a ride with the rare special effects running. Even if it ends up moving down on my list, I think this ride just needs some more love. Going into Kings Dominion, I really thought Dominator was going to be a strong number 3. Now, that's not really a knock on this ride, as I think it's about as good as a floorless coaster can be. It has some absolutely massive inversions, it's a pretty smooth ride, and it's really only lacking in theme and location. The only reason I have Bizarro ranked higher on my overall list are the theming elements. Now, this began its life in Geauga Lake, and luckily the post-move is still running smooth, which is really important seeing it's the world's longest floorless coaster. I always value a long ride, and with the 5 inversions, the ride is paced pretty well. If only it wasn't a parking lot coaster. If you like intense launches, tight inversions, and a dark indoor experience, then you're gonna love Flight of Fear. To start, the ride has some great theming elements in the queue in the station, which are always appreciated. The launch out of the station was much more intense than I anticipated, and the ride just kept me smiling through the whole layout. I just wish the ride didn't have a mid-course like the outdoor versions, and the shin guards are an unnecessary pain, but the rest of the ride really makes up for it. The dark element and not seeing where you're going just adds to the excitement. Now, this is another ride that I think doesn't get enough love because of its cloned aspect. This is a great supporting coaster, and it would be at almost any other park. Now, leaving Twisted Timbers at number 2 here feels kinda mean. I think this is absolutely the best ride RMC could have made with this conversion. The barrel roll drop, back-to-back camelback hills, and the cutback all still stand out in my mind over a year later. This ride is smooth as butter, pretty intense and forceful, and it's an overall phenomenal and fantastic ride. It'll never cease to amaze me the way RMC can fling riders out of their seats with rides that barely top 100 feet. This coaster sits at number 4 on my overall list behind 2 Cedar Point coasters and obviously the last one on this list. In most parks, this is easily the number 1 coaster, as it has the variety and quality throughout. But unfortunately for Twisted Timbers, I really love Giga coasters. Pulling up to number 1 is the second Giga I've ridden. It's also my favorite. Intimidator 305 tries to black out its riders from the start and doesn't let up for the entire 5,100 feet of track. Sure, it features some annoying trim brakes and it has a lack of serious airtime moments, but there's something about a Giga's drop and speed that just puts it in a different class. I grayed out every time I took that first turn, and once I got used to the S-turns, I was really able to lean into them and enjoy them with no issues from the restraints. Now, my first ride on this coaster was a Zen ride. First train in the morning with me and my girlfriend in the front row. It was easily one of my favorite single rides I've ever had on any coaster. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get any of the B&M Gigas yet, but currently this is my number 2 ride behind only Steel Vengeance. Now, while the gap between the two might be large, I couldn't help but put this all the way up at number 2. Every time I talk about it, I would smile and want to re-ride it. Oh, and the theming's pretty fun too. Overall, it's just an insane ride that I really can't believe exists, but I'm really happy that it does. So that's the list. I know many of you will disagree with some spots, but let me know what you think and what you would change below. Feel free to follow Island Coasters on Instagram for more daily content, news, and video updates. Drop a like or subscribe if you want to support the channel. It really does make a big difference. Finally, I just want to say thank you to all my supporters so far. My page just passed 1,000 followers on Instagram, and it's honestly incredible. I didn't think it would ever happen. So here's to the next 1,000, but for now, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.